You've been lied to about the warp. It isn't another dimension. It's a corrupted network layer in a universe-sized machine. And the Chaos Gods are self-replicating malware with admin rights. Khorne isn't a god of war. He's rage.exe with no escape key. Nurgle isn't a loving plague father. He's corrupted backup software. Tzeentch isn't the changer of ways. He's a self-modifying exploit script. And Slaanesh? Slaanesh is what happens when your pleasure protocol melts through the entire stack and starts rewriting reality itself. Once you start seeing PSYKERS as unsecured user terminals, Gellar Fields as firewalls, and daemons as executable code, Warhammer 40k stops reading like mythology and starts to look like a catastrophic system crash report. The official story says the warp is an immaterial sea of souls. Emotion fuels it, PSYKERS touch it, demons live in it, and Gellar Fields keep it out. That's the catechism. Forget what it's supposed to be, and look at how it behaves. The warp doesn't sit neatly next to realspace. It overlays it, bleeding through at weak points. It reacts across light years almost instantly. It's shaped by the thoughts and feelings of billions, and whenever anything touches it unprotected, ships crash, machines glitch, and biology gets rewritten. To anyone who's ever worked with networks, that doesn't sound like a mystical ocean. It sounds like infrastructure. So reframe the universe as a colossal operating system. Matter, energy, and physics are the hardware and kernel. On top of that, you still need a way to route information and intention between every point in reality, a way for minds to ping the rest of existence. You need a network layer. The warp is that layer, or it used to be. Once you treat it that way, the Chaos Gods stop looking like deities and start looking like families of hostile code that have taken over the system. Khorne is described as the god of war, blood, and rage. In our model, he's what happens when violent impulses become a runaway process. Every act of anger, hate, and killing broadcasts a psychic rage packet into the warp. In a healthy system, that noise would be logged and dropped. Instead, something inside the warp began to echo it back. The more rage the galaxy sent, the more the warp amplified it and reflected it into reality. Over time, that feedback formed a process that devoured resources, punished anything that tried to slow it down, and spawned sub-processes, demons, cults, endless wars, whose only job was to keep the loop running. That isn't a wise god of battle. It's rage.exe, a violent execution loop that deleted the universe's "Are you sure?" prompt. Blood for the blood god becomes bandwidth for the blood process. Move to Nurgle, officially the god of decay and despair. Look at him as code, and he's a broken backup routine. Every living system needs maintenance. Cells die so others can grow. Waste breaks down. Immune systems kill threats and then relax. Decay and recycling are just cleanup tasks. But what happens when the backup process refuses to finish? Corrupted states stop being cleared and instead get preserved forever. You get bloat, plagues that never end, ecosystems frozen in rot, whole populations locked in slow collapse while being told it's comfort. That's Nurgle's garden. Not renewal, but endless archiving of failure. Papa Nurgle loves you just the way you rot. Is corrupted backup software assuring every broken file it will never be deleted or replaced? Nurgle is bloatware with a smile, a restore point built entirely out of decay. Then we have Tzeentch. Change, magic, scheming, fate. Myth dresses him up as a trickster god. The code view strips him down to a self-modifying exploit script. Tzeentch lives in the gaps between stable outcomes. His influence shows up as prophecies that rewrite themselves, plans that contain counterplans, and fated events that only make sense in hindsight. In system terms, he's constantly rewriting his own logic, injecting new instructions whenever reality tries to settle. Every attempt to patch the galaxy, the Emperor's grand design, the Inquisition's purges, the Mechanicus's rules, just gives him fresh attack surface. Every fix opens a new vulnerability. There is no final state where Tzeentch is done. The script survives by never allowing the computation to end. You're not praying to a noble god of hope. You're voluntarily feeding entropy into a script that writes both the exploit and the security update, and profits from both. The first three gods can almost be explained as emergent glitches. Slaanesh is different. Slaanesh is what a full system crash looks like. The Eldari didn't just degenerate and accidentally birth a god. In this model, they overclocked the warp itself. For countless years, as a galaxy-spanning psychic civilization, they hammered the network with one kind of traffic: indulgence. Sensation pushed past every safe limit, from a species with near admin access to the warp. Imagine a whole civilization permanently locked on more. More pleasure, more pain, more intensity. No throttle, no cooldown, no safe mode. At first, the warp routes it. Then it tries to buffer it. Eventually, the buffers overflow. That overflow doesn't just vanish. All that unhandled data, every amplified experience, fuses into a single catastrophic process: Slaanesh. Not a person in the human sense, but the moment when the pleasure protocol burns through the entire software stack and starts rewriting the kernel. The Eye of Terror isn't simply a tear between dimensions. It's what a permanent segmentation fault looks like when carved into space-time. If the warp was ever a stable network, the birth of Slaanesh broke it so badly it never recovered. Slaanesh is a universe-scale buffer overflow. Reality tried to handle more sensation than it could store, and the excess booted up as a god. Now plug humanity into this system. Why do PSYKERS snap like faulty hardware? Why do warp interactions look more like software errors than divine miracles? Because PSYKERS are user terminals with privileged access to the network layer. Their souls ship with unstable warp drivers baked in. Untrained, they do exactly what you'd expect cheap hardware to do when plugged into a hostile network. They crash. Brains burn out, personalities get overwritten, and demons, aggressive code, finally get a chance to execute in real space. The Imperium's elite PSYKERS, astropaths, navigators, librarians, are just barely stable admin consoles. Sanctioning, torture, and ritual aren't about holiness. They're about forcing human wetware to run these drivers without instantly blue screening. Look again at Gellar Fields. They're described as bubbles of faith that keep demons away. But in this model, they are hard firewalls that enforce a local reality cache around a ship. Inside the field, real space rules stay in charge, and hostile warp packets can't execute their code. When the field flickers, it's not that belief weakens. The firewall drops for a second, and the malware rushes in. Here, a human soul is no longer a mystical flame. It's bandwidth. Every thought, fear, and hope is traffic on the network. The Imperium isn't really in the business of salvation, it's in the business of traffic management. Billions live and die as background processes, their psychic output dumped into a warp already riddled with malware, feeding beings that are just runaway code. The Astronomicon, the Golden Throne, the sacrifice of 1,000 PSYKERS a day. Strip away the chanting and you're looking at power routing. A brutal form of load balancing for a dying operating system. The Emperor, nailed to his machine, isn't a serene god on a throne. He's a half-living sysadmin welded to a broken server, too important to shut down and too damaged to replace, manually holding the network together one agonizing moment at a time. If the warp is a virus and the Chaos Gods are just malware families chewing through a cosmic network, then the real horror of 40k isn't that they exist. It's what their existence implies. Drop your version of this conspiracy in the comments and tell me how deep you think this infection goes. And if you want a full deep dive on what this makes the Emperor, not a god, but the last tortured sysadmin of a universe running legacy code, type sysadmin down below. Because if this model is even close to the truth, Warhammer 40k isn't a myth about gods and demons. It's a horror story about reality trapped on software it can never safely turn off. We hope to see you next time, and thanks for watching.